If you're like me and you're from the UK, you've probably never heard of a company called ZTE. Now, once upon a time, they were actually one of the top 5 biggest phone manufacturers in the world. But now they've sloped down the rankings due to pressures from Apple, Samsung, etc. And you can't actually get these phones from any high street stores here in the UK. So you have to order it direct from their website. I've managed to do that and pick up one of their top-end phones, and I want to give my opinion on it. Let's take a look. What's going on, guys? My name is Chris and welcome to the channel. Today I'm looking at the ZTE Axon 40 Ultra. Now, I've been using this phone for about a week and a half as my daily driver, and I've got some opinions on it. So in this video I'm just going to go over some specs, some pros, some cons, and ultimately tell you if it's worth picking up yourself. So please do stay tuned, hit that thumbs up button if you do like the video, and hit that subscribe button for more content from myself. So without further ado, let's check the specs out. So firstly, let's look at build. So on this phone we have a glass front, a glass rear, and an aluminium frame. Also, I believe this part here with the camera bump is also made out of aluminium. At least it feels like aluminium. If you ever use an S22 Ultra from Samsung, then this is a very reminiscent design and feel in the hand. Feels very solid, nicely built, no real complaints in regards to the build. One thing I would say, this frosted glass rear does add a slight bit of grip to a degree, but it also feels and sounds like plastic. So I'm not sure if that is full glass there. I've got a feeling it's a bit of a mix of the two, but it does kind of give a slightly cheaper feel to the back compared to proper traditional glass backs. It's also worth noting as well that there is no mention of an IP rating or Gorilla Glass protection on this device, which is a bit worrying. Now, you do get a built-in screen protector straight out of the box, which is nice, but the Gorilla Glass problem is a bit of an issue for me, and the IP rating, absolutely nothing at this kind of price point, is a bit of a shame. Now, we do have stereo speakers on board. We have one that fires at the top, one at the bottom. We do not have a headphone jack, so it's also worth mentioning. We have an IR blaster for you old school guys out there that want to use one, and then just the USB-C port on the bottom. The fingerprint sensor is a in-display fingerprint sensor, which you can probably just see there. We'll get a bit of a close-up on that. It's not very quick, but we'll get to that later on. So when we look at the display, we're looking at a 6.8-inch Full HD AMOLED 120Hz display. It also peaks out top brightness of 1500 nits, which is quite impressive at this price point, but it's worth noting you can't actually manually change that. It is something that happens automatically when the phone detects a lot of sunlight coming into the device. Internally, we have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chip in it. It's not the 8 Plus Gen 1 that we see in most other smartphones nowadays, because this was actually released at the start of the year, so only got the 8 Gen 1, not the 8 Plus. But again, you won't really see much of a difference between the two in day-to-day use. We've also got 8GB of RAM on this model I have here, and 128GB of storage. It's worth noting that there's no expandable storage on this device either, so if you do want to pick up that larger storage option, you need to do it at the time of purchasing. So when we look at the cameras, we actually have 3 64-megapixel cameras on the rear. We have a 35mm focal length, we have a 91mm focal length, and then a 16mm focal length ultra-wide. All 3 lenses have autofocus, and the telephoto and main sensor both have image stabilization. It's important to note that this is one of the first phones I've used that has a 35mm sensor as their main sensor. Normally it's around 26, 24, some have been wide at 22 now, but 35 is actually quite interesting, and it's actually quite a nice focal length, but we'll get more to that when we look at the cameras individually. We do have that front-facing camera as well, which is a bit of a gimmicky camera, really, because it's a invisible camera as such. It does have pixels over the top that may basically mask it when you're watching video, etc., so you get this full view experience on the screen. The downside to that is that the quality of that front-facing camera is pretty poor. It is a 16-megapixel sensor, f2, 26mm focal length, but we'll get to that again quality-wise later on in the video. Lastly, inside the phone we have a 5000 mAh battery, and that is capable of 65 watts fast charging via the dedicated charger that comes in the box. Worth noting that there is no wireless charging on board, and there is no reverse charging on board either. So now the specs are out of the way, let's take a look at the pros and cons, and we'll start with the pros. Firstly, the design. I do really like the design. As I said before, it's very reminiscent of an S22 Ultra, and that is one of my favourite kind of phones for feeling in the hand. I think it feels well made. The button placement's great. I think the design looks really nice. This rear panel is quite striking because of the frosted glass, this nice chunky camera area. I do really like that. Yes, I think the design itself is actually really good, and no complaints there. It's definitely one of the parts of the phone that I do really like. Next up, I would say the screen. The screen is quality. Again, very similar to the S22 Ultra, and bear in mind this is nearly half the price of that phone. That's a feat in itself. Quality is fantastic, colours really pop, everything looks really sharp and crisp, and I've had no complaints there. Also, I would speak about the software. Now, this is running on Android 12 and MyOS 12, which is ZTE's own skin on top of Android 12. And it offers enough extra little features here and there to kind of warrant the need for them without going excessively over the top and slowing the phone down. And I think they've done a really good job. So, again, really can't complain there. Now, I'm going to slowly transition to the cons, but as a pro / a con, I want to speak about the cameras. Now, as I said before, I really like this 35mm focal length on this main sensor. I think that's a really good focal length. The problem is with that, if you're not used to using a 35mm focal length, then you kind of forget how far away you need to be from the subject before the AF kicks in and bangs you into macro mode, and then obviously you lose some quality in the pictures. Now, I have some photos I'm going to show. I'm going to put them on the screen for you guys and give you my opinion on them. I think the photos are good. It is a shame that they're not as good as I thought they were going to be or as good as I wanted them to be. The telephoto lens is pretty good, but depending on the lighting conditions, the phone automatically switches to the main sensor instead and just crops in because it thinks it'll give you a better photo, which again is a shame. I want to be able to toggle that lens regardless. If the photo's going to come out bad, let me make that decision myself. Let me have that option. But the fact that it automatically switches is a bit of a pain. The ultra-wide's fine. It's a bit soft. You wouldn't think it was 64 megapixels. Obviously, all three of the cameras do drop down from 64 using pixel binning down to around, I think it's 14 or 12. I'll have to double check that. I will put that on the screen, but I can't remember which one it is. But they do drop down due to pixel binning. But I would say the photos are good. At this price point, there are better options out there. I would definitely say that. And like I say, it's a shame that main sensor's not as good as I want it to be. 35mm f1.6, it should be nice and sharp and bring in loads of light. It does, but I don't know if it's the processing side of things or it's a hardware thing. The photos are never tack sharp. So, yeah, that's my take. But take a look at the photos and see what you think. Okay, so now I've transitioned from a pro / to a con. Let's look at the rest of the cons. Now, one thing I would say is ZTE is pushing this 3rd generation on-display camera and basically giving it this immersive display when the camera's not in use and you can't see it. It's like it's invisible. And I agree to that in certain terms. When you are watching something on YouTube, a video, or watching something on Netflix, for example, then the phone can do pretty magical things with that area. You don't know it's there. However, on certain other screens, such as grey screens, which I'll put some little samples on the screen for you now, you can clearly see the camera there. Another side of that is they give you a built-in screen protector, which is fantastic, but they give you a hole punch cut at the top, which advertises where the camera is, so it even brings your eye to it. Now, yes, if I was going to keep this phone and use it as my constant phone, I would take that screen protector off and just probably not have one on there at all. But on display, it's not ready for the mainstream yet. I think there's definitely possibilities for it, but at the minute it's not great regardless. And then the actual quality of the selfies on the front face camera, and I'll post 1 or 2 up in a minute as well for you, they're bad. They're not good at all. They do benefit from some software processing in the background, which the phone seems to do really well, but it's still nowhere near even mid-range phones when it comes to selfies. So that on-display camera is a bit of a waste of time, and it is a bit of a gimmick, to be honest. I would also say another con is the fingerprint sensor. Now, it is very accurate. I've never had it miss my fingerprint at all, but it's quite slow. Nowadays, phones costing £600 plus, you expect the fingerprint sensors to be snappy and super quick. Unfortunately, in this area, whether they can change with updates, possibly, but it's pretty slow, which is a bit of a shame. I think another con is the lack of an IP rating. Again, at this price point, we're now seeing phones at £300 that have IP68 water and dust resistance, which is crazy. So having a phone at 600 plus and not having an IP rating at all, even 54 for example, is a bit of a shame. And also the Gorilla Glass on the front and rear, no mention of it having anything, again, is a bit of a worry at this price point. It seems that these are some of the things they've kind of knocked on the head for no apparent reason. Same with wireless charging. Again, this has got a glass back, apparently. There's no wireless charging on board. Again, seems a bit of a shame. Seems a bit of a... They've pushed so much onto this camera, this on-display camera, and the money in there, and they've took away some of the quite important features, as far as I'm concerned. Also no headphone jack, bit of a shame. I prefer a phone to have one, but I'm not 100% fussed if they don't. But again, doesn't have one at all at this price point. I kind of would like one. So with all that out of the way, it now comes down to the fact of whether this phone is worth the asking price. It's currently available about $650 on the website. I paid $620 and actually got a free smart light, which was really weird. It's like a desk lamp. I might show that in another video. It was just free in the box when it came. It was really strange. I now I'm actually using it. But at the price point, I think there are other phones on the market that do a better job. And they offer very similar experience, and if not better, in some regards, especially in regards to the cameras. They will also have IP rating, wireless charging, etc. So unfortunately for ZTE, this phone, as far as I'm concerned, is a bit of a miss. If it was around £450 to $500 maybe, I could probably then say it's worth it, but I personally wouldn't purchase this phone or recommend it to anyone out there. But that's my personal opinion. You guys might already have one, or you might be looking at buying one and think all those things I've mentioned aren't big concerns for you, therefore pick one up by all means. But my personal opinion is I would pass on this phone. But thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do stay tuned for more from myself. I have been ill for the last kind of 2 weeks. I'm just slowly kind of coming out of it, so been a bit delayed on the actual video side of things. But luckily I have managed to use a couple of phones in that time and shoot some video. So they'll be coming shortly. So thank you very much for watching, and please do hit that subscribe button for more content from myself, and hit that like button, and also drop me a comment. Any questions or any comments you've already got about this phone, please let me know. Thanks for watching.